Hi everyone, welcome to Dear BAMf, the show for PR and marketing pros like you, hosted by Beck Bamberger of BAM. BAM is a communications agency that believes stories move the world. We move stories forward for technology-driven brands that challenge, change, and create entire industries. Today, on the Dear BAMf podcast, we're talking with Mimi Gadsden, VP of Strategic Events and Marketing Operations at Doctor.com. Her work at Doctor.com has helped its clients reach over 100 million patients monthly, giving an unfair advantage to their online marketing. Let's dive in.
Welcome, everybody. This is Dear BAMf, the podcast for marketing, PR, publicists, basically people who are in communications and, you got problems because this is a complicated and hard industry we exist in. Thank you for listening. I'm Beck Bamberger, the CEO of BAM and also of One Pitch, which is a platform that helps publicists and journalists get the right pitches. And I think everyone's been listening here for a while. This is, I don't know what episode we're on, Mimi, but you are here. So today with us is Mimi Gadsden, want to make sure I got that right, who is the VP of Strategic Events and Marketing Operations at Doctor.com, which just recently got acquired. So I'm sure Mimi will tell us about that, but thank you for being here.
Happy to be here. I'm definitely happy to be here.
Yes, let's start with the first little 60-second-ish or so soundbite on what is Doctor.com, and could you tell us a little bit about how it impacts with the acquisition, if at all?
Sure. So the company I work for was Doctor.com, and as Bam said, we went through an acquisition. Woo!
Yes, congrats.
Yeah, every startup wants to get acquired. That was the goal, and that is where we're at now. And the company I work for now, we were acquired. We're going through the transition, but Doctor.com is really a company that updates information about physicians and hospitals, making sure that it's accurate throughout the World Wide Web, So a lot of times physicians come out of residency school and whatever their tax ID number or NPI number is associated with their information from back then. And as you know, physicians work numerous places. They have nowadays they also have quite a few private practices. And so what we do is we make sure that the information that we syndicate out to our third party sites like Healthgrades, Vitals, Wellness, Google is accurate information, and patients can reach doctors or they can reach the hospitals. And then we also make sure that from a patient side, you're able to read reviews on that doctor on numerous sites. So that one review gets syndicated to those other partners as well, so that the patient can make an informed decision on who they want to see.
Okay. I hadn't thought too much about, and I do know some doctors of just, they're all over the place. They're at this location, that location, they're going here, they have consulting, they do all this. So I can see how that's super helpful. And I like your website. It looks very nice. Did you have a hand in the website?
I didn't, but one of my colleagues and really great friends, Erin Kinchin, she definitely did. She's a powerhouse and
looks good.
Great marketer. But we got acquired by Press Ganey, and Press Ganey is the largest survey company and really, really close with patient experience, workforce engagement, clinical, a lot of surveys, patient safety. Doctor.com has become their consumerism business unit. So now we have 5 different business units, all within the medical environment that services hospitals and healthcare systems in the different departments. And it's pretty amazing and astonishing to see a company like Doctor.com becoming a business unit of a larger company and influencing that company, in the tech space.
I'm sure you got stories on it too. When did it officially happen, the acquisition?
October 2020.
Oh my.
I know. Isn't that crazy? Doctor.com had the best year during the pandemic.
Dang.
Yeah.
That was, telehealth, those were some of the winners. That might loop into then the next question here, which is, what are you most proud of accomplishing in this last 12-ish months?
Yeah, I think from a company perspective or a business goal perspective, it's definitely the acquisition. Something that the CEO and co-founder mentioned numerous times is they would love to get acquired by the right company. And so I think when I first started with Doctor.com, I knew the objective. The goal was to get acquired. And so I do feel like I was a part of the team that helped move that needle forward. But from the events perspective, I think, and I speak for most folks in the events industry when I say I'm most proud of our creativity, agility, and adapting to this new virtual environment. You never know. I mean, nobody was really expected what would happen with events. A lot of people thought events that's it would die. And that's definitely something that I thought a little bit about, but also at Doctor.com, we did webinars that were pretty successful. And so we just had to get creative as to what we were going to do in that space. And I'd say I was most proud of a few of the virtual events that we curated and executed on. Those were as engaging as you possibly could get in a virtual environment.
Yes, yes.
I think we did a virtual happy hour with a Jeopardy type of format for orthobiologics doctors. And some were prospects and some were clients. And we shipped out stemless embossed champagne glasses and small champagne bottles, and everybody brought it with them. And it was successful, And that was at a time when we all thought everybody was getting webinar fatigue. But again, the answer was, okay, let's do webinars. Let's do virtual events. And then it was like, oh no, everyone's getting webinar fatigue. And then it was like, oh no, how do we keep them engaged? Well, let's do this Jeopardy type of fun format, So we just had to keep getting creative throughout the year.
You gotta get creative.
Yeah. And something else that we did was like a relax and review event with the wine expert from Napa. And during that time, the Napa fires were happening. And the fact that this winery went above and beyond and was able to ship out tasting. They shipped out this whole kit with tastings and a note from us to the clients, and we got on the call. Yeah, and we did a wine tasting, and then we reviewed their account, and then we were able to upsell them on other products and services and add to their portfolio. So
wait a second. Let's break this down. So on a Zoom, you're sipping wine and you're closing deals?
Yes. That's exactly it.
I am impressed.
Yes.
Wow. Well, see, I guess business gets done in all types of formats. I would just never be thinking, you're like, oh, casually, I'm just sipping my wine talking about, oh, your kids are back in school. Yeah. Do you want to do this upsell? That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we called it the relax and review. And so what we did was, so the first half of it was the wine tasting. And then the second half is what we did was we were able to do an industry scan of other hospitals and healthcare systems in their area and how they matched up to them. And so we brought that data into a PowerPoint presentation or a Google Slides. And the information, the data was compelling. They were excited. They had some wine 30 minutes prior. And
very smart, Mimi. I like where this is going.
And, we were able to say to them, this is a product that you need, and these are the reasons why. This is how your product is currently performing that you have. So we did a little quarterly business review and then cross-sell, upsell opportunity, and it was successful. So yeah.
Dang, I need to take this to my team and say, listen, guys, now for our quarterly reviews, we're going to do the wine first.
Yes, the relaxing part first. And then with Press Gainey, I definitely can't take much credit for this because this happened as the acquisition. They executed on their national client conference. My team did. It was like 2,000 current clients. It was all virtual, and they knocked it out of the park. Yeah, so it's pretty impressive, and we're currently planning a hybrid event of that same conference.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
This is why I love doing this. I learn all these little gems. Okay, Mimi, before we get into our questions, because we have a couple advice questions, I should say, what's your favorite way then to tell a story right now?
Ooh.
Or convey one?
That's a great question. So I love nurture campaigns and patient-client journey stories. They always seem to be my favorite because it feels tangible. It feels relatable. Like you could actually put yourself in a patient journey. Like, oh, I've felt that as a patient. And when you have that emotional attachment, you're able to make decisions. And that's kind of the way that we really do speak to our prospects and our current clients. I think another great way is really case studies or client testimonials in a video format, because the clients also feel, oh yeah, that has happened at our hospital, or that has happened at our store. How are they able to get through that? I think that that's always something, another way of having people identify to a feeling associated with their story, then you can make it as your own story. But I think one of probably the most popular one that happened in 2020 was problem solution, so you identify a problem statistically and provide a solution through products and offerings that you have in an educational way, not a hard sell. And I think that a lot of people were looking for statistics this last year. We're looking for companies like Press Ganey for advice on how to work with their current workforce, or how we could advise hospitals to work with their nurses and so on. So I think that one has been the most popular. Something that Erin Kitchen used to do at Doctor.com is trend survey. She used to work on, every year she would do a trend survey and identify what the trends were in the healthcare space. And that report provided us with, it was like the gift that kept on giving. I mean, we were able to create lifestyle campaigns from that report, from that data. We were able to create informational case studies, one-pagers, what have you. We were able to do a whole interview, a blog post around that information. That is something that I really do encourage companies, is to create a trend survey in their industry at the beginning of each year of the prior year, because those numbers and those statistics, it's just amazing to see how you're able to reuse that information.
Doesn't everyone like trends too?
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, everyone loves trends. But something else that I remembered, to the question of what were you most proud of? So Doctor.com, we created this virtual visit platform. So it was a free telemedicine product for our current clients. And I mean, basically we knew that there was a problem, and we wanted to make sure that our clients were able to still see patients. And so we created a virtual visit, and we launched it last year as, a product for our current clients to solve that problem for them. During that time, I was also managing the digital team, and we created a lifestyle campaign to target doctors in a different way. The first was like, okay, here is the solution to your problem of not being able to see patients. Then we took it a step further, and we're like, let's create a lifestyle campaign where it shows doctors like on the beach taking telemedicine appointments, or a doctor that's dressed up from the waist up, but from the waist down, he had on pajamas and he was playing fetch with his dog. And I think it's because, the way that the country was during that time, it was very relatable. And that's definitely something that I'm very proud of being able to be a part of.
Demystifying the prestige, I don't want to say maybe prestige or like taking it away or any sense, but just maybe making doctors more accessible in that sense, or more human, that you can connect to them more, would you say?
Oh yeah, definitely. That was definitely it. Like, we are all in a pandemic, and we all are trying to do the best we can. Doctors become more human, even though you're not able to see them face to face. You see them in a different type of environment that is usually personal. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that in just the pillar or the surrounding of the prestige of doctors, but everyone I think can relate to the feeling of like going into the doctor's office and sitting there and being like, I don't want to be here. Typically, you're not usually at the doctor's like for fun, going in there, and then you got to get in the white flap of the white coat thing, not the white coat thing, but what am I talking about? The piece of flat paper that covers you, or whatever, the gown that's not a gown, but you're supposed to, anyway. No one enjoys it. So, and then in comes a doctor who has limited time perhaps, and this is your time to say whatever you need to say. yes, I think it's brought down the barriers of that perception of seeing the doctor.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And I think lifestyle campaigns help that.
Big time. Well, good job on that. Well, we have some questions, Mimi. I will start off with the first one here. Here it is. Dear BAMf, the company CEO, or my company CEO, is heading to DC next weekend for some meetings and is really eager to talk about making a media tour out of it. That said, I'm not sure how journalists feel about an in-person meeting since the pandemic is still happening and there's much changing. Do I risk offending them by reaching out to ask? What's the best approach here? I've asked media to events before, and at first my CEO, quote unquote, wanted to do a small event, but I thought that was totally off the table. What would you say, Mimi? And by the way, we're recording this just for everybody listening in May. So, yes. As the days turn and weeks turn, things change rapidly. But yeah, what would you say just in general of such a situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Yes, you definitely risk it. I mean, what is the actual risk? Something that I totally live by is, and what my mom used to always say to me actually is, where there's a will, there's a way. And I say that to myself oftentimes when I'm put in a decision where I have to make the final and best decision for the objective. Now, given that we are still in a pandemic, although things are very different depending on where you live, and CDC is updating their protocols and precautionary measures day by day. I think to protect yourself, I would say the best approach here is to create a best practices documentation that could be modified. Right now, companies are hosting in-person events and conferences, but there are some strict protocols in place depending on where you are located in the US. So I believe that probably the first step would be to have a conversation with a few of your best media contacts, that the ones that you have like these established cultivating relationships with, the ones that feel the closest to you, and kind of just gauge how they feel. I think messaging this as like an exclusive VIP opportunity for them to get the story first while gauging their comfort level and letting them know that there's going to be some type of safety parameters to ensure their safety is what they're probably looking for. They want to be reassured that you're taking the measures. Having consent forms that protect the company is something that you definitely have to have. And I think that is one of the ways to adhere to the protocols, while making sure that the media feels safe in an environment that you created. And it can be a small environment. It could actually be it could be a socially distanced, using
talk.
Using a room in a hotel that's usually for 200 people, making that maybe for 75 people, if that's how big your media contact list is, and making it more of a Q&A. Another way to execute on an initiative would be to host like a one-on-one rapid fire Q&A with the CEO and the media, and give them a specific time slot, kind of like a press tour, but the CEO isn't moving. He stays in one place, and you circulate the media like an interviewee seat. And you could also hire a third-party medical company that takes rapid PCR tests on site. So everyone is tested beforehand and you get the results within minutes. I think that because our environment, we're changing so much and so fast, in order to accomplish this, you can definitely accomplish this in person. You can make it as large as you want by adhering to protocols. But number one is making sure that you have consent forms that protect your company.
I'd also like to suggest here, and we don't know the context of this, why the CEO, what company, what level is this, et cetera. I would believe that media are certainly more interested in showing up, let's say, in what you're suggesting, Mimi, at a certain place in a certain time, one-on-one. Okay, great. Or even meeting for a coffee with the CEO somewhere, something like that. If this company has a lot of cachet, do I want to meet with this CEO? In other words, am I going to come out of my little cavern, my little hole that I've been cooped up in, enjoying my pandemic life perhaps to some extent, in order to do now this very pre-pandemic thing of meeting casually, let's say for a coffee, or going to a place where I would have this? In other words, this isn't yet normal again. And so if you want to even attempt it, sure, but I'd be realistic with what cachet do you have in order to get a yes from someone going, wait, I haven't seen a CEO in person for 18 months. I mean, this one's not going to be the one I go see first. You know what I mean? Like people are still crawling out. So if you're some kind of smaller company here thinking you're going to really pull people out to come see you, I don't know. I'd be careful.
Yeah. I think if you are a smaller company and you want to pull people out, again, I think it goes to gauging your media contacts.
Yes.
Gauging
yes,
the interest
exactly.
and like how comfortable they are, and also adapting to that. If you still want to have this media exposure, maybe it's done in a virtual platform where it's in an interview type of setting virtually with a blog, and some PR around it. But I do think that there are some people that are wanting to get back out there.
I also think so too. So you might get the eager beavers who are like, yes, take me to a coffee, feed me a dinner. Yes, please. Yes. And we have heard that actually. There are handfuls. I don't think on the introvert front, everyone's jumping up and down, but there are some for sure.
I mean, it's interesting. Like right now, we're talking about having an in-person get-together.
When?
Just like our team, but at the same time,
your team, yeah.
It's still like, oh wow, I can't believe this is already happening, and we're already talking about going back into the offices, and so people are eager to get back to as normal as possible, but that's scary, to be honest, because I think we've learned a lot in what happened in the last year, and a lot of how to balance life. And I feel, especially in a place like New York City, that is quickly being forgotten. And yes. Everybody's ready to hit the ground.
As you were telling me, yeah. Because we just want it so bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Mimi, next question here. Dear BAMf, part of my role at my startup is producing events, which have, of course, turned completely digital for the last several months. By the way, I can tell you're in New York City. I hear the sirens.
New York City's back.
There it is. Now that we're coming out of the pandemic, I'm rethinking the quote unquote typical stuff I used to do. Big stage, one room, all in person, etc. What are some ideas the Dear BAMf Group is thinking about in 2022 in terms of events? I think the industry has changed for good, but I want to be on the leading edge of it, particularly as my startup heads to an IPO in the next 2 years. My CEO, as you can imagine, would love the cachet and buzz of an Apple conference, but you know how CEOs are.
Yes, I do know how CEOs.
This person knows what's up. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what was it? Just yesterday, I think Google had their I/O conference, right, in person, and everybody was really excited. However, I will say this, I think there is an appetite, a large appetite for hybrid events now.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, that are a little bit more tech heavy. I think that these large in-person events could be catered more towards like a specific targeted audience, like say C-suite execs and decision makers with buying power, right? Especially if your event is to have some ROI tied to it or create ROI. Well, I think that the virtual component, say continuing education related, can be curated towards like the director level, the managers, so they could use this as an opportunity to understand the tools that are being purchased or the tools that are out there or the trends or how to speak to clients or prospects or hospital staff. Like this could be like the virtual component of it could be a learning component or a training component where they hear experts talk about solutions and showcase the solution portion of the educational component of these presentations to that particular audience, so that the audience is bought into using your tools and services, while the CEOs are purchasing more products and the CEOs are hearing about the problems that are current in the industry and what the solutions are for those problems. And so I think that you can execute on an event and have two targeted audience with two different tracks by providing these hybrid events, one track specific to the audience and the other and another track for the other. But I do think that these event apps are going to need to be stronger. and have like higher engagement initiatives for both audiences. I think that, for somebody who's purchasing these apps, engagement initiatives are so important. They need to be a little bit more robust because now that's kind of like the minimum expectation of the purchasing audience. So the event producers, like we want to see reporting, we want to see analytics. That's just a must. And contact information of prospects is in demand, or at least I'm demanding it for my follow-up.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think that is what the appetite is. The appetite is definitely going to be hybrid events. I think that you could have the big Apple conferences, the big Google conferences, and get more CEOs in those rooms while you continue to have a virtual component, because the front lines, the people who are managers, the people that are using your products and tools, they're your advocates. And at the end of the day, those are who your clients are.
To your point with the hybrid element or the accessibility of that now, I think everyone now is like, oh yeah, hybrid, or we can do that. And I mean, I'm even thinking about this for stuff we want to do is how do you encourage the in-person, because there's magic that happens, of course, between sessions and meeting in person and having conversations that are random and just not facilitated. And there's a lot of magic to that. And now I'm answering my own thing of kind of how do you make more exclusive coverage or content with the in-person to encourage in-person attendance, if of course safe to do so, versus, oh, okay, I guess I can just hop online and attend this thing and it's going to be like the same. It's like, ooh, how do you drive wanting to see it live and in person for those who are like, that's fine, I can just watch the digital clip. That's not going to command a ticket price like what you would get with a live event. So that's something to probably think about.
Yeah, I think it's like creating some sort of outreach or survey to the C-level execs, asking them what they want to hear. Going back to that trend survey,
yes,
pulling out those statistics of what it is that what the problems that they're facing, what are the solutions, having dynamic speakers that are amongst their colleagues, speaking about giving their case studies, giving their testimonials. I think when you doing a market scan for the C-level execs and saying, this is how much money you're losing right now. I think that the agenda for that audience needs to be very high level and very much so related to their problem, which is money they're losing and money they're not making.
There you go. Speaking to the audience.
Yes.
100%. Okay. Last question, Mimi, we have for today. Dear BAMf, my startup is currently only live in a handful of cities across the US, but we're growing quite quickly and planning to expand in many more markets by the end of this year. How do I get national media or reporters based in a city where our services aren't available to care about what we're doing? Should I be thinking of small but impactful events?
Yes, I love small and impactful events and roadshows. I think that they do accomplish quite a bit. But something else that I would suggest is definitely working with like a local PR agency in every city, since they will have the best relationship with the media markets in that area. And I think while that PR agency works on that component, I think executing a small, impactful event portion of it could definitely be handled by the team. Think about how you could engulf yourself in that market and research your target audience on your own. And try to understand who that target audience is, what publications they seem to gear towards, where do they look to find their information or their news. I think all of that can be done in-house because, PR agencies could get very expensive.
I was going to say, yep.
Yeah, and depending on your budget, your company, I think that could definitely be an avenue. Another way is looking to see in that area if there's a state college or a city college or a university, and reaching out to their communications department that has a PR degree. Usually you have communications and PR, and reaching out to those seniors and talking to them a little bit about how their local markets operate, because they also know that information because it's a part of their curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding, I mean, I'm not sure if you're able to offer credits as like an intern.
Ooh, uh-huh.
Yeah, but I mean, even just having the conversation with those seniors that are applying to jobs, in that area at other PR firms, and getting their take on their audience and where everyone is finding the news, and who to speak to and how to speak to, I think is worth it as well.
Mm-hmm. I wonder too, obviously this is a startup. We don't know the size of this startup, of course, but is it even something that you could take this on tour of any sort? Like, could you make this a like city by city tour in a big, like decked out tour bus of any sort? Obviously we don't have the context of what this company does or exactly what they're selling, but that could be something that creates a bit of a splash when you come to that, instead of just like, oh, our service is now offered here.
It's first,
don't you want it?
Figuring out who is who, and
yes.
what do they do, and who the decision makers are of that area. I think first is the research component, and then I definitely think you could make a splash by hosting some type of cocktail event, or prior to that, making sure that there's communications that are sent out. But I think that I like I said, I love in-person road shows. I think that they are impactful. They're small but impactful. As long as you can identify 5 advocates that are strong influencers in that area, then I think that's exactly that's the goal, and you've hit the objective.
You could also then tie it in with, now this is the next thing you could do. You could have certain speakers, maybe like local speakers. I mean, how do you tie it into like a community thing? Now I'm like running away with this idea of like, okay, if you're going to do this road tour, how do you bring in the community? How do you tie it into, let's say, a nonprofit that's based in the community, but speakers who are in that community? You have to make it more focused on the community and where it is. I know this person's asking, how do I get the national coverage? But a lot of campaigns, if you look even as far back of like Lyft's rollout into a market by market, or really any that you see, there is a calculated and city by city approach that typically takes place, so that they know, okay, what events do we need to show up for? What audiences are we attracting? How do we get in there and get in there deep, instead of trying to gobble up a lot of national press when really, frankly, you're not national yet.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
You'll get there. You'll definitely get there. And to your point, like Lyft was really strategic. They rolled out in mainly West Coast cities. It was really big in Scottsdale, Arizona, and in the suburbs of Southern California, where Uber was largely used in New York City and San Francisco. So when I came out here, I only used Lyft, and, I am a loyal Lyft rider. And so I would tell everyone to use Lyft, because I knew the safety measures that they were taking in place to vet their drivers, whereas Uber wasn't taking those same safety measures. And so you have, creating loyal followers and advocates is important. And I think you start small, you penetrate by understanding who's who, working with a nonprofit or working with the mayor.
Oh yeah, the mayor.
Yeah,
yes.
The mayor, and working with them pretty closely, hosting an event, and then, start your nurture campaigns. Start getting them interested in your products and services and purchasing before the national rollout. And that way, when you start in these, smaller markets, to be honest, it's almost like a test, right? So you keep changing if it's an app,
you're going to learn
improving.
Yep, that's right.
Before you roll it out to the bigger markets.
100%. Use it as your testing ground.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, Mimi, this has been so lovely. We've covered all the questions we have for today, just for today. That's why we keep the show going, because this is just today. But thank you for being here. And I cannot wait to be back in New York City.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
I cannot wait.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
I agree.
Thanks for listening to Dear BAMf, the advice podcast for PR and marketing pros like you. Our show was created by BAM, a PR and marketing agency headquartered in San Diego and New York City. The music you're enjoying today was composed by Tiffany Dizon, produced by Daniel Kessner, and played by San Diego Symphony's Art of Milan. If you have a tough PR and marketing question you'd like us to answer, write to us at bamtheagency.com/Dear BAMf. Don't forget the F. If you'd like to get notified of our latest episodes, subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.